He still remembered the first morning he walked into the office. The building looked too polished for someone like him. The glass walls reflected the city skyline, and the lobby smelled like fresh coffee and expensive perfume. He adjusted his tie twice before stepping inside, telling himself to stay calm. This was the opportunity he had worked for. The company had a strong reputation. People said it was fast-growing, competitive, and not for the weak. The CEO was known for being sharp, strict, and impossible to impress. Some employees admired her. Others feared her. Everyone respected her. He had never spoken to someone at that level before. On his first day, he only saw her from a distance. She walked quickly through the hallway, surrounded by senior managers. Her face was serious. Her steps were confident. When someone tried to greet her, she nodded politely but didn't slow down. He told himself one thing that day: stay invisible and do your job well. For the first few months, that plan worked. He arrived early, sometimes before the cleaning staff had finished their rounds. He stayed late, even when his co-workers had already left. He double-checked every email before sending it. He didn't join office gossip. He didn't take long lunch breaks. He focused only on proving that he deserved to be there. At first, she didn't seem to notice him at all. Then one afternoon, everything changed. He received an email from her assistant asking him to come to her office at 3:30 p.m. There was no explanation, no subject line, just a time. His heart started beating fast. He replayed the last few days in his head. Had he made a mistake? Did he send a wrong report? Was someone unhappy with his work? He checked his sent emails twice before walking to her office. Her office was quiet and large, with wide windows that showed the entire city below. She was standing near the window when he entered. She didn't smile. "Close the door," she said calmly. That simple sentence made his throat dry. She turned around and looked at him directly. Her eyes were sharp but not angry. "I've been reviewing your reports," she said. "You missed one small detail in last week's financial summary." He immediately apologized. He explained what happened. He promised it wouldn't happen again. She listened without interrupting. Then she nodded once. "Fix it. Send me the corrected version by tonight." That was it. No shouting. No warning. No praise either. He walked out feeling confused. It was a small issue. His direct manager could have handled it. Why did she call him personally? He tried not to overthink it, but the calls didn't stop. A few days later, he was asked to come again. This time, she questioned him about a presentation he helped prepare. She pointed out minor changes that needed improvement. Her tone was firm, almost intense. After that meeting, one of his co-workers leaned over and whispered, "Be careful. When she starts focusing on someone like that, it usually means they won't last." The comment stayed in his mind. Soon he noticed something strange. During team meetings, she would ask him more questions than others. If someone else presented an idea, she would listen quietly. But when it was his turn to speak, she would look directly at him, asking for more details. Sometimes her eyes stayed on him longer than necessary. It made him nervous. He started preparing extra for every meeting. He would rehearse what he planned to say. He wrote notes in small letters, so his hands wouldn't shake while holding the paper. At night, he updated his resume quietly, not because he wanted to leave, but because he felt like he might not have a choice soon. The rumors began slowly. "Why does she always call you?" Someone asked casually near the coffee machine. "I don't know," he answered honestly. Another co-worker joked, "Maybe she's building a case against you." Everyone laughed. He didn't. One afternoon, he made a simple suggestion during a brainstorming session. It wasn't a big idea, just a small improvement. She didn't respond immediately. She just looked at him carefully, like she was studying him. Then she said, "Explain that further." He did. The room became quiet as he spoke. When he finished, she nodded slightly. "That could work," she said. It wasn't praise, but it wasn't criticism either. Still, his stomach stayed tight. Why was she paying so much attention to him? He wasn't the most experienced person there. He wasn't the loudest voice in the room. There were others with more years, more confidence, and stronger connections. Yet somehow, he felt like he was constantly under a spotlight. One evening, as he packed his bag to leave, he noticed her office light was still on. Most of the staff had gone home. The hallway was almost empty. As he walked past her door, she suddenly stepped out. "You're still here?" she asked. "Yes," he replied quickly. Finishing the quarterly review, she looked at him for a moment, not with anger, not with pressure, just looking. "Good," she said softly. Attention to detail matters. For a brief second, her voice didn't sound strict. It sounded almost approving. Then she walked away. That small moment confused him even more. If she wanted him gone, why acknowledge his effort? The next week, something else happened. During a department meeting, a senior employee made a noticeable mistake in a report. Everyone expected her to react strongly. She was known for not tolerating errors. But instead of reacting harshly, she calmly corrected the mistake and moved on. He sat there wondering. When he made a small mistake, she called him personally. When someone else made a bigger one, she handled it lightly. It didn't make sense. The tension began affecting him. He started overthinking every email she sent. Even a simple "see me" message made his pulse rise. He told himself to stay professional, to not assume anything. But the human mind doesn't work that way. Fear grows quietly when there are no clear answers. One night, he stayed so late that the security guard reminded him the building would close soon. As he walked out into the cool night air, he felt tired, not just physically, but mentally. He kept asking himself the same question. What did she want from him? He respected her. He admired her discipline and leadership. But her attention felt like pressure pressing on his chest. The following Monday, another email arrived. "Come to my office at 4 p.m. No explanation again. This time, he felt almost certain. This is it, he thought. This is the meeting. He spent the whole day working harder than usual, almost as if extra effort could change what was coming. At 3:58 p.m., he stood outside her door. He took a deep breath and knocked. "Come in," her voice said from inside. He stepped in, ready for the worst. She was seated at her desk, reading something carefully. She didn't look angry. She didn't look disappointed either. She gestured for him to sit. For a moment, the room was silent except for the faint sound of traffic outside. Then she looked up at him. "I've been observing your work closely," she said. His heart dropped. Observing closely? That didn't sound good. He prepared himself for the words that might follow. But instead of criticism, she continued, "You have potential. But potential means nothing without pressure." He blinked, confused. "I push the people I see promise in," she added. The words didn't fully register at first. Promise? He wasn't sure if he heard correctly. Was this a warning? A compliment? Both? She leaned back slightly in her chair. "Don't misunderstand me. I expect more from you. That's why I've been direct." He nodded slowly. The meeting ended shortly after. No termination. No formal warning. As he walked back to his desk, his emotions were mixed. Part of him felt relieved. Part of him felt even more confused than before. If she saw a promise in him, why did it feel like he was always one step away from losing everything? That night, he didn't update his resume. Instead, he sat quietly in his apartment, staring at the city lights outside his window. Maybe he had been wrong. Or maybe he was missing something important. One thing was certain. Whatever was happening between him and the CEO was not simple, and it was only the beginning. The days after that meeting felt different, but not easier. He kept thinking about her words. Potential, pressure, promise. They echoed in his mind while he worked, while he walked home, even while he tried to sleep. He wanted to believe them, but fear doesn't disappear just because of one conversation. At the office, her behavior didn't change much on the surface. She was still serious, still demanding, still sharp with her questions. But now, every interaction carried a different weight. She started giving him tasks that were clearly above his role. One morning, an email arrived asking him to prepare a detailed analysis for a board-level review. Normally, that kind of work was handled by senior staff. He read the message 3 times, making sure it was really meant for him. He wanted to ask his manager if it was a mistake, but something stopped him. Instead, he stayed quiet and got to work. The task was intense. Long hours, constant revisions. Every number had to be accurate. Every sentence had to be clear. He skipped lunches and worked through evenings, driven by a mix of determination and fear. When he finally submitted the report, he waited. An hour passed. Then two. No response. By the end of the day, he was sure he had failed. The next morning, he found her standing near his desk. "Walk with me," she said. People nearby pretended not to listen, but everyone noticed. As they walked down the hallway, she spoke quietly. "Your analysis was solid. A few improvements needed, but overall, good work." Good work. The word surprised him so much that he almost stopped walking. She continued, "I've added comments. Review them and resubmit by tomorrow." Then she walked away. No smile, no praise in front of others. But his chest felt lighter. That small moment gave him confidence. Yet it also raised new questions. Why was she investing so much time in him? Other employees noticed too. During lunch, someone said, "You're getting special treatment lately." He shook his head. "It doesn't feel special." Another person laughed. That's how pressure looks from the inside. As weeks passed, their interactions became more frequent. Sometimes she challenged his ideas sharply. Other times, she asked for his opinion in private meetings. She listened when he spoke, really listened. That made him nervous. One evening, a sudden issue came up with a client. The team panicked. Emails flew back and forth. Meetings were called late into the night. She called him directly. "I need you here," she said. He arrived quickly. The office was almost empty, lights dimmed except for a few rooms. They worked side by side for hours, reviewing documents and fixing mistakes. At one point, he noticed how tired she looked. The strong image everyone feared was gone for a moment. She rubbed her eyes and leaned back in her chair. "You should go home," he said carefully. "I can handle the rest." She looked at him, surprised. "I don't usually hear that," she replied. For a second, there was silence. Then she nodded. "Finish it. Lock the files before you leave." It was trust. That night, as he walked out of the building alone, he felt something change inside him. The fear of being fired was still there, but it was mixed with something else. Responsibility, pride, and confusion. The rumors started shifting. At first, people whispered that he was under investigation. Now they whispered that he was being prepared for something bigger. Maybe she sees leadership in him. Maybe he's her project. He tried to ignore it, but then came the business trip. The company needed someone to attend meetings with potential partners in another city. To his shock, she chose him. The email said they would be traveling together. His hands trembled as he read it. A trip meant long hours, close contact, no escape. He wondered if this was another test. The flight was quiet. She reviewed documents while he stared out the window, replaying everything in his head. At the hotel, they checked in separately. Everything stayed professional. The meetings went well. He supported her presentations, answered questions when asked, and stayed focused. That evening, after the final meeting, they found themselves alone at dinner. No team, no assistants, just the two of them. She asked him how he was handling the pressure. He answered honestly, "Some days are hard, but I'm learning." She nodded slowly. Growth usually feels uncomfortable. They talk about work at first. Then, slowly the conversation changed. She asked where he came from, what pushed him to work so hard, what he wanted for his future. He shared parts of his life he rarely talked about. To his surprise, she listened quietly, without interrupting. Then she shared something too. A brief story about starting the company. The sleepless nights, the fear of failure, the loneliness at the top. It was the first time he saw her as a person, not just a position. The moment passed quickly. She stood up and said they should rest for the next day. Back in his room, he lay awake. The idea that she might see him differently crossed his mind. He pushed it away. That kind of thought was dangerous. Back at the office, things felt heavier. She became more distant in public, more careful, but in private meetings, she was focused and intense. One afternoon, during a presentation, someone criticized his work unfairly. Before he could respond, she stepped in. "That's not accurate," she said firmly. He followed the strategy one approved. The room went quiet. No one expected her to defend him so directly. After the meeting, his heart raced. That night, he realized something uncomfortable. He wasn't just afraid of losing his job anymore. He was afraid of what her attention meant. Because attention can build someone up, and it can also change everything. He stood at his desk late, staring at his screen without seeing the numbers. He didn't know where this path was leading, but he knew one thing. This was no longer just about work. After the meeting where she defended him, the office air changed. It wasn't loud or obvious. No one said anything directly, but people noticed. Eyes followed him when he walked past. Conversation stopped when he joined a group. Smiles looked forced. He felt everywhere. At first, he told himself he was imagining things. Stress can make a person paranoid. Pressure can twist simple moments into big worries. But then the comments started. "You're busy these days," someone said near the printer. Another added, "Must be nice to have her support." The tone was light, but something sharp hit underneath. He didn't respond. He focused on his screen, his tasks, his deadlines. Still, the weight followed him. She noticed it too. In public meetings, she became more distant. She stopped asking him questions in front of others. She avoided direct eye contact unless necessary. It felt like a sudden wall had gone up. In private, though, nothing changed. She still called him into her office, still challenged his thinking, still expected more from him than from most others. The contrast confused him. One moment, he felt invisible. The next, he felt seen more clearly than ever. Late one afternoon, she asked him to stay back after a team meeting. The room emptied slowly. Chairs scraped the floor. Laptops closed. When the door finally shut, the silence fell heavy. "You handled that discussion well," she said, without looking up from her notes. "Thank you," he replied. She nodded once. "Pressure suits you." He didn't know how to respond to that. As he stood to leave, she added, "Ignore the noise. Focus on your work." Noise. So she knew. That night, he walked home instead of taking a ride. The city lights blurred as he replayed the day. He wondered when work had stopped being just work. He remembered how excited he had been when he first got the job. How simple his goals were back then. Do well, learn, grow. Now, everything felt complicated. The next few weeks passed in a strange rhythm. Some days were calm. Others were tense. He noticed small things he hadn't before. How she adjusted her tone depending on who was in the room. How she seemed more careful with her words around him in public. How she sometimes paused before speaking, as if deciding what not to say. One evening, the power went out in part of the building. Emergency lights turned on, casting long shadows across the hallway. Most employees packed up and left early. He stayed. So, did she. They found themselves in the break area, waiting for updates from maintenance. For once, there were no meetings to rush to, no emails demanding answers. Just quiet. "Why do you work so late?" she asked suddenly. He thought about it. "Because I don't want to waste this chance." She looked at him for a long moment. "Opportunities can be heavy," she said. "They come with expectations." "I know," he replied. The lights flickered back on soon after. The moment ended, but it stayed with him. A few days later, an unexpected problem hit one of their biggest projects. Deadlines were at risk. Tempers rose. She called an emergency meeting and assigned roles quickly. When she looked at him, she said, "You're with me on this." No hesitation. No explanation. Just trust. They worked side by side for 2 days straight. Little sleep. Too much coffee. Shared silence and sharp focus. At one point, he noticed her hand shaking slightly as she held a cup. "You should rest," he said. She gave a tired smile. "After this is done." When the issue was finally resolved, the relief was clear on everyone's faces. Later that evening, she stopped him near the elevator. "You did well," she said quietly. This time, there was no audience. He felt warmth spread through his chest. But with it came fear, because feelings once noticed are hard to ignore. The rumors grew louder after that project. Some said he was being prepared for promotion. Others said something less professional. He hated hearing those whispers, not because of her, but because of what they could cost both of them. One afternoon, he overheard two co-workers talking. "She never acts like that," one said. "Not for anyone." "Exactly," the other replied. He walked away before they noticed him. That night, he sat alone in his apartment, lights off, phone untouched. He tried to name what he was feeling: respect, gratitude, pressure, and something else he didn't want to admit. The next day, she canceled their regular one-on-one meeting without explanation. Then she canceled the next. In public, she was colder than ever. He felt the distance sharply. Had he crossed a line without knowing? Had someone said something? The uncertainty returned stronger than before. Finally, late on a Friday, she sent a short message: "Come by before you leave." His heart sank. When he entered her office, she was standing, not sitting. The blinds were half closed. The city outside glowed softly. "We need to be careful," she said, getting straight to the point. "About what?" he asked, though he already knew. "Perception," she replied, "and boundaries." He nodded. "I understand." She exhaled slowly, as if relieved. "I don't want your growth questioned," she continued, "or your work undermined." Her words were protective. That scared him more than anger would have. After that conversation, they pulled back. No late-night work together. No private dinners during trips. Everything became formal. The office calmed. The rumors faded. But inside him, nothing felt settled. He missed the honesty of their earlier conversations, the clarity, the trust. Weeks later, during a company event, he saw her across the room. She laughed at something someone said. It was rare, soft, real. For a brief moment, their eyes met. There was no smile, just understanding. He realized then that this wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. It was something both of them were aware of, something unspoken, something waiting. And he knew the next step, whatever it was, would change everything. The distance between them lasted longer than he expected. Days turned into weeks. Work continued. Deadlines came and went. Meetings filled the calendar. On the surface, everything looked normal again. Inside him, it didn't. He did his job well, maybe even better than before. He spoke less in meetings. He kept his opinions short and careful. He avoided staying late when he knew she was still in the building. Not because he didn't want to work, because it hurt to pretend nothing had changed. She kept her word, too. She stayed professional, calm, controlled. If anyone watched closely, they would see nothing unusual. But sometimes, when she thought no one was looking, her eyes searched the room. And sometimes they landed on him. Those brief moments were harder than long conversations had ever been. One afternoon, a senior manager stopped him near the stairs. "You okay?" the manager asked casually. He nodded. "Why?" The manager hesitated, then smiled. "Just checking. You've been under a lot of pressure." Pressure. That word followed him everywhere. Later that week, a review meeting was scheduled with the board. It was a big one. Decisions made that could affect the entire company. The night before the meeting, his direct manager called him. "There's been a change," the manager said. "You're presenting the final numbers." His heart jumped. "Me?" "Yes. She asked for you." That single sentence brought back everything he had tried to push down. The presentation room was cold and quiet the next morning. The board members sat around the table, serious and focused. She sat at the head. When it was his turn, he stood, hands steady despite the noise in his head. He spoke clearly. He explained the numbers, the risks, the plan. Once or twice, he felt her eyes on him. Not critical, not distant, present. When he finished, there were questions. Tough ones. He answered carefully. She stepped in only when necessary, never overshadowing him. Afterward, as people gathered their papers, one board member nodded at him with approval. "Well done," the man said. He exhaled for the first time in an hour. Outside the room, she caught up to him. "Good job," she said quietly. It sounded simple, but it meant more than she knew. That evening, she sent him a short message. "Come by. We need to talk." No time, no explanation. His chest tightened. When he entered her office, she didn't ask him to sit. She closed the door herself. "I owe you honesty," she said. The word stopped him in place. She turned to face him, arms crossed, not as a shield but as if holding herself together. "I push you hard," she continued. "Harder than I should have." He stayed silent. "I told myself it was about your potential," she said. "And part of it was—" She took a breath. "A real one. But I wasn't being honest with myself." The room felt smaller. "I noticed you early," she said. "Not just your work. The way you listen. The way you stay calm under pressure. The way you don't try to impress." He swallowed. "I tried to keep it professional," she went on. "I thought if I stayed strict, it would go away." She shook her head slightly. "It didn't." The truth landed softly but firmly. "I don't want this to hurt you," she said, "or your future here." He finally spoke. "I was scared you wanted me gone." She looked surprised. Then something like regret crossed her face. "I never wanted that," she said quietly. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then she added, "That's why I pulled back. I thought distance would fix it." "It didn't," he replied honestly. She gave a small, sad smile. They talked for a long time that evening. About boundaries. About responsibility. About how easily power can complicate feelings. Nothing dramatic happened. No promises. Just honesty. They agreed on one thing. Whatever came next had to be careful. The following weeks felt different again. Lighter. They didn't hide behind cold professionalism anymore. But they didn't cross lines either. Conversations were open, respectful, clear. The tension didn't disappear, but it stopped hurting. One afternoon, a junior employee made a mistake that could have cost the team weeks of work. Panic spread quickly. She handled it calmly, assigning tasks and fixing the issue. Later, she called him into her office. "I want you to lead the recovery plan," she said. It was a big responsibility. "Are you sure?" he asked. "I am," she replied. "You've earned it." That night, he stayed late again, but this time it felt different. Not like fear, like purpose. As he worked, he thought about how wrong he had been. All those months, he had believed her attention meant danger. He had mistaken intensity for anger, pressure for rejection. The truth had been much more human. At the end of the week, she stopped him as he was leaving. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" he asked. "For staying," she replied. He nodded. Walking out into the evening air, he realized something important. This story wasn't about a job anymore. It was about trust and choices and the risk of being honest when hiding feels safer. He knew one thing for sure. The final decision, whatever it would be, was still ahead. After that honest conversation, life didn't suddenly turn perfect. If anything, it became quieter. There were no dramatic moments, no big announcements, no change that others could easily point to. Work continued the same way it always had. Emails, meetings, deadlines. But inside him, everything felt different. He no longer woke up with fear sitting heavy in his chest. The constant worry of losing his job slowly faded. In its place came clarity. He knew where he stood, not just as an employee, but as a person. She kept her distance at work, just as they had agreed. In meetings, she treated him like everyone else. Fair, professional, focused, but the respect between them was stronger now. When he spoke, she listened. When she asked for his input, it felt earned, not forced. The recovery plan he was leading moved forward smoothly. The team trusted him. Even those who had once whispered about favoritism began to see his effort and discipline. One afternoon, a co-worker stopped by his desk. "You handled that project really well," the co-worker said. "Didn't expect it to turn around so fast." "Neither did I," he replied honestly. For the first time, the praise felt clean. No doubt, no fear attached. Weeks passed, then months. The company grew. New clients came in. New challenges followed. Through it all, he stayed focused on his work. He learned how to manage pressure without letting it consume him. He also learned something else. Feelings don't disappear just because people agree to be careful. Sometimes they simply wait. One evening, long after most employees had left. He found himself standing by the window in the break area. The city lights shimmered below. The building was quiet. She stepped in quietly. "I thought you'd be gone already," she said. "Finishing something up," he replied. They stood there for a moment, side by side, not too close, not too far. "I've been thinking," she said. He waited. "You've grown a lot since you joined," she continued. "Not just in skill, in confidence." He smiled faintly. "You pushed me." She nodded. "I did." Then she added, "I don't want to hold you back. Ever." The words mattered. It wasn't a confession. It was care. A few days later, he received an offer. Not from another company. From within. A new role. More responsibility. A clear step forward. When he read the email, his hands trembled slightly. He hadn't expected it so soon. He went to her office, not to thank her, but to be honest. "If this causes problems," he said, "I don't want it." She looked at him steadily. "You earned this. Anyone who looks closely will see that." He accepted. The announcement was made the following week. Some people were surprised. Others nodded like it made sense. The whispers were fewer this time, because results speak louder than rumors. After that, their conversations became even more balanced. Less weight, less unspoken tension. They still avoided crossing lines at work. They respected the structure, the responsibility. But outside the office, things slowly changed. It started with a simple message, a question about a book, then a conversation about music, then coffee on a weekend in a place far from the office. No rush, no pressure, just two people talking like normal human beings. They set clear boundaries, took things slowly, made sure no one felt uncomfortable or unsure. For him, the biggest change wasn't the relationship. It was how he saw himself. He remembered the nights he stayed awake, convinced he was about to lose everything. The fear that had almost pushed him to quit. If he had left back then, none of this would have happened. He learned that silence can hide many things. Fear, respect, even care. One evening, months later, they stood outside the office building after a long day. The air was cool. The street was calm. She looked at him and said, "I'm glad you stayed." "So am I," he replied. There was no dramatic ending, no perfect moment, just honesty earned slowly over time. Looking back, he realized how easy it is to misunderstand pressure, to confuse attention with threat, to assume the worst when answers aren't clear. The person he thought wanted him gone had seen something in him long before he saw it himself. And the job he feared losing had become the place where he grew the most. Life didn't change overnight. It changed quietly, through effort, through trust, through choosing courage over fear. And that made all the difference.